another one.
So, how would you work a project? I have a few questions. What are the processes and workflows you guys have used to work on projects? Projects being something bigger than an individual ticket. What's worked? What's trash? If you could design a process to work projects as a QA, how would you do it? I like assigning a QA early on in the software development lifecycle so they know what's going on and what has been changed since the original documentation has been generated. Then having a QA run relevant regression tests as a safety net. Some product knowledge will be required there. Currently, the process is very ad hoc even after we are done, and the devs and products still make changes, which is BS. I'm trying to develop an effective but efficient process for my team to work. So, what are your thoughts? All right, cool. So, let's start a timer. And I would say that the process for QA is very similar to what you laid out, right? But as always, I say get the as QA engineers, we have to be in the we have to get involved as early as possible, right? And that includes you're involved at the inception of not necessarily of the story, because especially if you're working in an agile and scrum environment, which you can work in an agile environment for anything that you're doing. It doesn't have to be limited to tech, right? It can be for anything that you're doing. You can work in an agile environment where you're working in Scrum or Kanban. You have sprints, you have stories, you have points, all that good stuff, right? But as a Q engineer, your number one focus has to be on the acceptance criteria, right? Making sure that it's clear and it's understandable. You have a clear definition of done. And now, so that's from the very beginning, right? So that's the process that I would first lay out first for my QA engineers. Make sure that you're asking questions. You have a clear understanding of what is the expected outcome of the story. You have it clearly laid out. And so it's like when you have a story, it's okay, what should happen? What are our expected results for this story, right? And you're assessing the risk, you're asking questions, you're making recommendations as well. You're approaching it from a customer perspective. What is the best user experience could be? Getting feedback, like talking to the product owner, talking to the developers, talking to the Scrum Master. Your input is absolutely valuable, because and a lot of times people they don't feel appreciated as QA because you don't say anything, right? You just want to sit there and you want to test, but you say, okay, how can we add value before we actually start testing, right? So that would be like the first part of the process and the workflow, right? Now, once that story is bought into the sprint for that project, because I know you mentioned you're not talking about tickets, but many tickets make up a project, right? All the tickets make up a project. So what I'm expressing is how you would work all those tickets that make up that whole project. And it starts like, how do you work on a project? Well, one ticket at a time, right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I don't know who eats elephants, but that's what the saying goes. So how do you work on a project? One ticket at a time, one task at a time. So when you say, okay, I'm going to work on this story, and here's the acceptance criteria. As soon as you start working on the stories, now let's start building our test plan. Try to get to that test plan as early as possible before the developers even start implementing, and then you discuss that test plan with the developers, right? All right. So based on the acceptance criteria, here is my test plan. Here are my test scenarios. Here are my test cases. And what do you think about that? Is there anything that I'm missing in here that that you see that I haven't seen? And they're like, okay, yeah, there's this part as well. You might want to touch on this. We're going to be touching the code over here, so you might want to get that. So you update the test plan. But here's the benefit of writing the test plan as early as possible and discussing with the developers as close to them starting implementation as possible, right? The key is that they will. Did I start the clock? Did I start the clock? Oh, wait, I did. All right, cool. Almost a little gasket there. All right. So the key is that you also put in their mind what QA is going to be looking for, so that they because that's going to help reduce finding bugs. I know a lot of people they love to find bugs, right? They love to find bugs, but I don't like finding bugs. Like when I find them, I'm happy I caught it because we prevented an issue a defect going into production. But I'd rather not allow the defect to even be introduced, right? So that's why we're having those discussions, and we're like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. So you give them some ideas of as they're coding. Oh yeah, QA is going to be looking for that. So let me make sure I focus on here, and they get it cleaned up, and now we don't have that problem at all, right? So that's the next part of the process, right? So you get the test plans written as early as possible. Now, whenever possible, start writing the blueprint or the frame, not the framework, but like the blueprint of like what is your automation test going to look like. So if you're doing like web testing, you should be able to start writing the test, like this is the flow that we're going to follow, and then once the selectors are available, then you start plugging in the selectors. The same thing can be done with API tests. You might have to go back and rework some things at some points, but you'll get a lot further than like waiting until all the development is done and then you start to like automate everything, right? So start trying to prepare the automated test for like once the development is done, you just go back in and then you just do the rest, right? So that now, once the implementation is done, then you start to like you run your regression test, you do your manual test, and then you finish up your automated test and you make sure everything is good. If there's any problems, that's when you go through like sending back the defects and stuff like that and getting those fixed. And then now, hopefully your automated tests are already done so that you can just run regression. You don't have to do a bunch of manual testing over and over and over again, right? So that is how I would approach the process for like working on projects, because the projects are just many little individual tickets put together that are working towards a common goal, right? So that is my framework that I use when I'm working on projects. That's how I've been doing it for a very long time. And that's how we keep things running smoothly and how we have things that stay consistently automated, all right? So hopefully that helped. Hopefully that added value to your life, all right? So let's wrap that one up.
If you enjoyed the fascinating information shared in this video and you want more, be sure to hit the subscribe button to Tech Coach Ralph to be notified for new videos.